The scars on his face told a story of survival, but the fire in his eyes told a story of defiance. This is how Franck Ribery turned childhood tragedy into a force that would conquer the world of football. You're not going to want to miss a second of this incredible journey, so make sure you're subscribed and have those notifications turned on. If any player in the history of this beautiful game truly had to claw his way from the absolute depths, from the very rock bottom, before finding his path to the pinnacle, it was Franck Ribery. This isn't just a story about football. It's a story about the human spirit. It's the story of how a young man went from being a construction worker, earning a minimum wage, to a global superstar footballer, making thousands of euros every single day, all in the span of a little over 2 years. And that was just the beginning, the prelude to a career that would see him carve his name into the annals of football history as one of the all-time greats. Ribery's story begins in the north of France, in a town called Boulogne-sur-Mer, a place nestled right by the English Channel. He was born into a low-income family, a world away from the glamour he would one day know. His mother worked tirelessly as a housekeeper, and his father was a construction worker. His hands calloused from years of hard labor. It was a life of simple means of making ends meet, a life grounded in the realities of hard work. But then, at the tender age of just 2 years old, his world, his life, his very face was turned upside down in an instant of screeching tires and shattering glass. The car his parents were driving crashed violently into a truck. The impact was horrific, and little Frank, a toddler in the back seat, was catapulted through the windscreen. He went headfirst through the glass, a moment of unimaginable terror that would change his life forever. He suffered devastating facial injuries. It took over 100 stitches to painstakingly piece the torn tissue of his face back together, but some things can't be fully mended. The accident left him permanently scarred, a visible reminder of the day his life almost ended before it had truly begun. The physical pain he endured in the aftermath was, of course, immense, a constant throbbing echo of the trauma. But as he grew, another kind of pain began to fester, a wound far deeper than any scar tissue. It was the mental anguish, the relentless cruelty of other children, the constant mocking, the whispers and stares directed at his appearance. In the cruel world of the playground, he was an easy target. But Franck Ribery would not allow himself to be defined by one tragic moment, by the ignorance of others. He refused to be a victim. In an interview years later, he reflected on this, saying something that reveals everything about the man he would become. He said, "The accident helped me. It motivated me as a child. The scars were part of me. And the world would have to take me just the way I was." That right there is the genesis of the warrior. That mentality, forged in the crucible of pain and prejudice, built his character. It made him a fighter, a survivor, a man who would carry that same defiance onto the pitch, a presence that would define his entire career. 4 years after the accident, at 6 years old, Franck found his sanctuary, the football pitch. He started playing for his local youth club, Conti Boulogne. And even though we now recognize the generational talent he possessed, he wasn't a prodigy who was immediately fast-tracked. He stayed there for 7 years, living a relatively normal life, honing his skills on the modest pitches of his hometown. It was during this time, in the rough and tumble of youth football, that he earned his famous nickname, Scarface, a direct nod to Al Pacino's iconic character, Tony Montana. It was a name born from his appearance, but it fit his spirit perfectly, a character as fierce and untamable as Franck himself. After those 7 years of local football, he finally got his big break, or so it seemed. He joined the Academy of Lille, a significant step up for the young teenager. At the time, Lille was competing in the second tier of French football. But for a boy from Boulogne, it was a world of opportunity. Football had already become his lifeline. In school, he was by his own admission an absolute disaster. He had no interest, constantly failed his classes, and felt like an outsider. The structure and rules of the classroom felt alien to him. His energy found its release on the streets, where he would frequently get into fights, his temper a short fuse. When he joined the Lille Academy, his parents breathed a sigh of relief. They hoped this was it, the path that would set him straight, that would channel his restless energy into something positive. His time at Lille lasted for 3 years. But the discipline and structure he so desperately needed still eluded him. He was seen as a lost cause, his behavior deemed too erratic, too rebellious. He couldn't seem to shake the chip on his shoulder. Then came the physical setbacks. He suffered a broken elbow, a significant injury for a developing player. Whispers started circulating among the coaches, the damning verdict that he was simply too small, too fragile to ever make it as a professional footballer. And so Lille made their decision. They cut him. They dropped him from the team. Just like that, at 16 years old, Franck Ribery was back on the streets of Ballon. He was without a team, his dream in tatters, with seemingly no prospects for a bright future. It was a brutal, crushing blow. With no other options, no other path to follow, he did the only thing he could. He returned home and started playing for his local club once again, US Ballon. He spent a year back in the youth squad, swallowing his pride before finally getting his competitive debut for the senior team in the French 4th Division, the Championnat de France Amateur. Over that season, he managed to play in only 4 matches as Bologna scraped their way to promotion into the 3rd Division. You might think this was the turning point, the moment Ribery became a regular starter and propelled his hometown club towards the top tiers of French football. But that's not how this story goes. Reality is rarely that neat. The very next season, Ballon was immediately relegated back to the 4th tier. However, Ribery had shown just enough flashes of his raw talent to earn himself his first ever transfer. He moved to Olympique Alès, another club in the 3rd Division, maintaining his precarious foothold on the lower rungs of the professional ladder. It's crucial to understand that at this point, football was not a lucrative career. It wasn't even enough to keep food on the table. Throughout his first 3 seasons as a so-called professional player, playing in the gritty, unglamorous world of the French lower leagues, Ribery had to work a second job. He worked alongside his father, waking up before dawn, heading to construction sites, his body aching from the physical labor. He was living a dual life, a footballer by passion, a construction worker by necessity. He was fighting for his dream on muddy pitches on the weekend and hauling materials on dusty building sites during the week, all just to earn a decent wage. But then, after years of struggle and obscurity, his first real chance to make a name for himself arrived. He secured yet another transfer, this time a significant step up to Stade Brestois in the French 2nd Division Ligue 2. And this time, something clicked. This was the moment the warrior was unleashed. Ribery didn't just play well. He absolutely destroyed the league. He was a whirlwind of energy, a blur of skill and aggression. He topped the league's assist charts, a creative force that his opponents simply couldn't handle. He single-handedly transformed the team, taking Brest from a mediocre 10th place finish the previous season and propelling them to promotion into the promised land of Ligue 1. These electrifying performances did not go unnoticed. The bigger clubs, the ones who had once dismissed him, were now paying attention. And so Ribery made his next move, this time to FC Metz, a club already established in the top tier. The step up to Ligue 1 didn't faze him one bit. At Metz, the fans instantly fell in love with his style, his passion, his relentless work rate. They saw a reflection of their own blue-collar values in his tenacious play. Comparisons quickly began to swirl, linking him to another club legend, the great Robert Pires, who had graced the same pitch for Metz just a few years prior. Ribery was finally on the big stage, and he was thriving. By the January transfer window of that season, an unexpected twist unfolded. Ribéry had only signed a one-year contract, and negotiations to extend it began to stall. Having lit up the league over the first half of the season, even winning a Player of the Month award, he naturally attracted a wave of interest from several prominent clubs. His old club Lille came sniffing around, as did the Dutch giants Ajax. But ultimately, it was the Turkish powerhouse Galatasaray who secured his signature. It was a deal for a half-season loan with an option to buy for a mere €3 million. Franck Ribery was heading to Istanbul. His time at Galatasaray, though brief, gave us the first true glimpses of the world-class player he was destined to become. The atmosphere in Turkey was electric, a cauldron of passion that perfectly matched his own. For a while, he struggled to nail down a starting spot, coming off the bench, providing an assist here and there. But then came a match against Ankaraspor. This was his statement. He proved beyond any doubt that he deserved to play the full 90 minutes. He was unplayable, setting up 2 goals in the opening 25 minutes of the match, tearing the opposition apart with his blistering pace and dazzling footwork. It was then that the manager, the legendary Gheorghe Hagi, knew he had something special. Hagi saw the raw, untamed genius in the young Frenchman. The player, now affectionately known in Turkey as Franck Ribery, for his incredible speed, had to be locked in for good. The club wasted no time exercising their purchase option and securing him on a 3-year contract. As the season neared its conclusion, Ribery was given more and more opportunities to shine, and his most memorable moment was yet to come. It arrived in the final of the Turkish Cup. In the fiery crucible of a derby against their bitter rivals, Fenerbahçe Ribery rose to the occasion. He opened the scoring, setting the tone for what would become a historic rout. Galatasaray thrashed Fenerbahçe 5-1 to lift the trophy, and Ribery, the new kid on the block, was a hero. In just 6 short months, Franck Ribery had gone from a relative unknown to one of the most beloved players in the entire squad. The fans adored him, his name chanted from the pulsating stands of the Ali Sami Yen Stadium. But in football, heroes can become villains overnight. And it would take just one decision for Ribery to turn himself into the most hated man in the eyes of the very fans who had worshipped him. You see, behind the scenes, Galatasaray was in turmoil. The club was facing serious financial issues, and the promises made to their new star weren't being kept. They had only paid Ribery's wages once since he had arrived in Turkey. As much as he was enjoying his time there, as much as he fed off the passion of the supporters, he didn't have a deep-rooted sentimental bond with the club. For a man who had known poverty, who had worked on construction sites to survive financial security, was paramount. So, with a cold sense of pragmatism, he made his move. He forcefully terminated his contract at the end of the season, citing the unpaid wages, and promptly joined Olympique de Marseille on a free transfer. Now, this is a tough one. Ribery felt betrayed by unpaid wages, but the Galatasaray fans felt betrayed by his departure. Who do you think was in the right here? Was he justified in forcing his way out, or should loyalty have come first? Let me know your honest thoughts down in the comments. The fallout was immediate and incredibly ugly. The situation escalated to terrifying heights. At one point, Ribery's former agent, who had been fired in the process, showed up at his family's house back in France, accompanied by 2 Galatasaray representatives. The confrontation turned menacing. They allegedly threatened to destroy his car with a baseball bat. It was a stark and brutal introduction to the darker side of the football business. The ensuing court case dragged on for years. Galatasaray claimed the delayed wages weren't significant enough to warrant a contract termination, and that Ribery had illegally entered into talks with another team without notifying them. Ribery's camp argued that they had tried everything to resolve the issue, but the board was stubborn and completely unresponsive. In the end, as you might have predicted, the court sided with the player. Ribery won the case, but the saga left a bitter taste. As his time at Marseille began, the perception of Franck Ribery had shifted dramatically. He was no longer a promising youngster. He was now seen as a top-tier player, a star. He was immediately handed the iconic number 7 shirt and all the responsibility that came with it. From the very get-go, he was the main man. And he didn't disappoint one bit. He announced his arrival by helping Marseille win the Intertoto Cup, a gateway to the UEFA Cup. They beat formidable opponents like Young Boys and Lazio before facing Deportivo La Coruña in the final. And the final itself was peak Ribéry. He scored a fantastic goal within the first 4 minutes, a moment of pure brilliance. Then just 6 minutes later, his fiery temper got the better of him. He got into a fight with Aldo Duschker, and as the clock had barely reached the 10-minute mark, he was shown a straight red card. Brilliance and belligerence, all in the space of a few minutes. That was Franck Ribery. Over the rest of the season, he shone repeatedly, becoming the creative heart of the Marseille team. He produced a moment of absolute magic against Nantes, scoring a breathtaking game-winning goal from 35 yards out with only 17 minutes left to play. It was an incredible strike of pure technique and audacity, an effort that would eventually, and deservedly, be crowned the goal of the season. He was particularly remarkable in the Coupe de France, the French Cup, single-handedly leading Marseille and all the way to the final. There they would face their arch-rivals, Paris Saint-Germain, in the legendary derby known as Le Classique. The atmosphere was electric, a nation divided. Unfortunately for Ribéry and Marseille, they would lose the final. Regardless of the result, his performances throughout the season were so outstanding that he was awarded the prestigious UNFP Young Player of the Year award. Just a few weeks after that cup final heartbreak, Ribéry earned his first ever cap for the French national team. It was a dream come true. What made it even more remarkable was that the mere 46 minutes he played across 3 friendly matches before the 2006 World Cup were enough to convince the manager Raymond Domenech to include him in the squad for the tournament in Germany. And incredibly, he wasn't just there to make up the numbers. He started in every single match of the tournament, except for one, cementing his place in a star-studded French team that included legends like Zidane, Henry, and Thuram. His most impressive moment on the world's biggest stage came in the round of 16 against a formidable Spanish side. It was here that he scored his first ever goal for Les Bleus. Latching onto a perfect through ball from Patrick Vieira, he showed incredible composure, coolly dribbling past the legendary Iker Casillas before slotting the ball into the empty net. It was a goal that announced his arrival as a true force in international football. France, against all odds, made it all the way to the final, where they would face Italy. The match, forever remembered for Zidane's infamous headbutt, was ultimately decided by the cruel lottery of a penalty shootout. Ribéry, who had been substituted in extra time, could only watch on from the sidelines as Italy converted all of their spot kicks to become world champions. It must have been an agonizing way to lose for the then 23-year-old Ribéry, so close to the ultimate prize, yet so far. Regardless, this devastating moment wouldn't halt the intense speculations swirling around the player's future. His World Cup performances had put him in the global spotlight. Both Arsenal under Arsène Wenger and the mighty Real Madrid had reportedly tabled offers of up to 30 million euros for him. But Marseille understandably stood firm. They insisted that they were not going to let go of their prized asset, their young superstar. With the heightened popularity and scintillating form of Ribéry, some pundits and fans claimed that Marseille might finally be on their way to winning the league title. The season started well, but then the unexpected happened. The team hit a disastrous run of form. 7 matches yielded 6 defeats and a solitary draw. Marseille plummeted down the table to 8th place, their title aspirations vanishing into thin air. To make matters even worse, Ribéry suffered a severe injury, and he would struggle with his fitness for the remainder of the season. There was, however, a silver lining. A crucial goal from Ribery helped launch Marseille to a second consecutive final of the Coupe de France. This time they would emerge victorious, winning on penalties. The season ended on a high note for him personally, as his contributions were recognized with the French Player of the Year award. But the inconsistent season had planted seeds of doubt in the minds of some. Questions were being asked about Ribery's ability to stay fit, his fragility. And though his market value had taken a slight dip, Marseille still managed to secure a club record transfer fee of 25 million euros as Franck Ribery packed his bags for Germany. He was joining Bayern Munich. Once again, there was no gentle introduction, no time to settle in. The pressure was immense from day one. He was immediately handed the legendary number 7 shirt, a number previously worn by club icon Mehmet Scholl. The expectation was clear. He was here to be a leader, a game changer. His official debut came against Werder Bremen, and it was nothing short of glorious. It was a statement of intent. Bayern ran out 4-1 winners with Ribery putting on a masterclass. He scored twice and assisted another, a dazzling display that instantly won over the famously demanding Bayern fans. Their trust was secured. By April, despite the league title being pretty much in the bag and with both domestic cups already secured, Bayern suffered a humbling setback, getting thrashed 4-0 by Zenit St. Petersburg in the UEFA Cup. Still, the season was a resounding success. The domestic treble was achieved and Ribery's contribution was staggering. He tallied a total of 39 goal involvements in just 46 matches. It was a phenomenal debut season, setting an incredible precedent for what was to come during his legendary tenure at Bayern. After a disappointing group stage elimination at the Euro 2008 tournament, where Ribery was widely expected to step into the massive shoes of the retired Zinedine Zidane and become the national team's main creative force, he returned for his second season with the Bavarians. Unfortunately, this season would be plagued by a recurring theme in his career. He suffered 6 different injuries. A frustrating and disruptive series of setbacks that further fueled the narrative that his body was too fragile, that his fitness couldn't be relied upon. Regardless, his immense talent was so great that it enabled him to shine through all the adversity. He produced moments of magic whenever he was on the pitch, so much so that he was recognized on the world's biggest individual stage. He placed 3rd in the voting for the Ballon d'Or, a phenomenal achievement, finishing behind only the 2 titans of the modern era, Lionel Messi and Cristiano Ronaldo. The remainder of the season, however, would prove to be deeply unsatisfactory for the club. Bayern failed to secure a single trophy. Incredibly, they were outdone in the league by a sensational Wolfsburg side, led by the prolific duo of Graphite and Edin Dzeko. Wolfsburg managed to edge out Bayern with just 2 games to go after the 2 clubs had been neck and neck, tied on points for a significant period. The following year, the frustrating trend continued. Ribery started the season with his name once again at the center of heavy transfer speculation. It seemed like every major club in Europe was trying their luck, with some reports claiming offers of up to 65 million euros were being made. To shut down all the talk and make their position unequivocally clear, Bayern publicly slapped a 100 million euro price tag on him. At the time, this would have made him the most expensive player in the history of football. Perhaps they were right to value him so highly, because that season would come agonizingly close to being one of the club's greatest ever. In a year where Ribery was once again hampered by injuries, suffering a total of 7 different setbacks, and even being sidelined for 2 whole months in the autumn, one single element proved capable of transforming the team's fortunes. It was the arrival of a certain Dutch winger from Real Madrid, Arjen Robben. This was the birth of Robbery, a duo that would terrorize defenses for a decade and define an era for Bayern Munich. Their journey together is filled with incredible highs and devastating lows. And trust me, you won't want to miss what comes next. If you love stories about iconic partnerships in football, hit that subscribe button, because we have so many more legends to explore. The two of them, Ribery on the left, Robben on the right, formed one of football's most cherished and devastating partnerships. They were yin and yang, two individualistic geniuses who together created something truly special. They combined for some of the most memorable moments in the rich history of the club. Despite his frequent injury layoffs, when he was fit, Ribery was breathtakingly effective, managing a goal or an assist every 100 minutes. And given that only two of his injuries affected the second half of the season, the duo of Robbery was in full force for the crucial Champions League knockout stage. In the round of 16 against Fiorentina, Robben scored two crucial goals and Ribery assisted one. Then in a dramatic quarter-final against Manchester United, Ribery grabbed a goal and an assist, and Robben scored one of the most iconic volleys in Champions League history to send them through. As they met Lyon in the semi-final, everyone expected them to continue their destructive path to the final. But before we get to the climax of that season, we have to talk about the 2010 World Cup in South Africa. It was an unmitigated disaster for the French national team, and Ribery was at the heart of the controversy. The French camp imploded in a firestorm of infighting and scandal. It was alleged that Ribery and Nicolas Anelka conspired with their teammates to outcast the gifted playmaker, Yoann Gourcuff. Gourcuff was envied by some of the senior players for the way the adoring media treated him. That French squad was infamously known as the spoilt brat generation. But Gourcuff was the exception. He was clean-cut with a good boy image, and the media had hailed him as the natural heir to Zidane. The internal politics and jealousy reached a boiling point. It all climaxed in Anelka being sent home mid-tournament for insulting the coach, followed by the entire team boycotting a training session in protest. It was a national disgrace. In the aftermath, Ribery was banned for 3 matches by the French Football Federation and was forced to make a public apology to the nation for his role in the truly appalling behavior. To compound what was becoming a messy and difficult year, Ribery would get severely injured right at the start of the following season. He would go on to have one of his least successful campaigns at Bayern, with the team finishing a disappointing 3rd in the league. It should be noted, however, that even in a bad season by his standards, he still put up incredible numbers when he was on the pitch, contributing to a goal every 77 minutes he played. The 2011-2012 season could have been, and should have been, a great opportunity for Ribery to make history. For once, he seemed to have put his injury woes behind him, missing only one single game through injury throughout the entire campaign. He was fit, firing, and in scintillating form. Unfortunately, the end of that season would be nothing short of dramatic, a triple heartbreak that would have broken lesser men. With just 5 matches to go in the Bundesliga season, Bayern were only 3 points behind their new rivals, Borussia Dortmund, coached by the charismatic Jürgen Klopp. But a series of blunders and slip-ups saw them quickly fall far behind, losing all hope of retaining their league title. Still, there was a massive source of hope. They had reached the final of both the domestic cup, the DFB Pokal, and the Holy Grail itself, the Champions League. In the Champions League, the Robbery duo had been sensational, combining for an incredible 14-goal contributions across the 11 matches played, even with Robben missing most of the group stage. The stage was set for a glorious end to the season, but it all unraveled in the most painful way imaginable. Over the weeks that followed, a rampant Robert Lewandowski scored a hat-trick as Dortmund humiliated Bayern in the final of the DFB Pokal. The pain of that defeat was immense, but it would only get worse. They arrived at their own stadium, the Allianz Arena, as heavy favorites to win the Champions League final against an underdog Chelsea side. It was meant to be their crowning moment, their destiny. But after taking a late lead, they were stunned by a last-gasp equalizer from Didier Drogba. The match was pushed into extra time and eventually to the agony of penalties. In front of their own devastated fans, they lost the shootout. 3 trophies within their grasp, all lost in the space of a few agonizing weeks. But not all was lost. Because with every new season comes a new opportunity to make history, to reinvent yourself, to turn heartbreak into fuel. That is the true beauty of football. And that's how I'll introduce you to the 2012-2013 season. The perfect testimony to this campaign comes in one simple, staggering statement. With Franck Ribery on the pitch, Bayern Munich lost only once and drew only 3 times. That's it. Across a full season in all competitions. This season, Ribery would again suffer a series of minor injuries, 7 in total. But they were all simple, quick fixes that didn't keep him out for long. Under the masterful guidance of manager Jupp Heynckes, Bayern were not just a team, they were a machine, a relentless, unstoppable force. Just 14 matches into the Bundesliga season, they already held a commanding 10-point lead. It was early, but nobody was expecting any other outcome. The league was theirs. Ribery was averaging a goal contribution every 90 minutes, and Robben won every 85. They were operating on a different plane of existence. This dominance carried over into the Champions League. They steamrolled through the knockout stages, beating Juventus 4-0 on aggregate. And then, in the semi-final, they faced the mighty Barcelona of Lionel Messi. What followed was one of the most shocking results in modern football history. They beat them 7-0 on aggregate. Yes, 7-0. For those of you who started watching football a few years ago and thought the 8-2 was bad, well, this was the original demolition. Once they made it to the final at Wembley, they met their familiar rivals, Borussia Dortmund. It was an all-German final, a testament to the power of the Bundesliga at the time. And if the previous year a late goal had sent them into despair, this year a late goal would send them into ecstasy. In the 89th minute, a brilliant piece of play from Ribery set up Arjen Robben, who had already assisted the first goal, to calmly slot the ball past the keeper and give Bayern the trophy. Redemption. That year, Bayern were so absolutely dominant that it's hard to even dramatize their season. They were simply unequivocally superior to every other team in the world. They were a legendary squad at the absolute peak of their powers, and Franck Ribery was their beating heart. With a season like that, where Ribery seemed to either score assist or do both in almost every single match he played. From the turn of the year, it would be easy to assume that if he managed a strong start to the following season, he would finally win the Ballon d'Or. This seemed even more certain after he deservedly took home the UEFA Best Player in Europe award. He would go on to win both the UEFA Super Cup and the Club World Cup, totaling an incredible 5 trophies in a single calendar year. But what if I told you that he would start the following season in blistering form with 20 goals and assists in just 23 matches, only to end up yet again finishing 3rd in the Ballon d'Or, voting behind Messi and Ronaldo? It's one of the great what-ifs in football history. Do you think Ribery was robbed of the Ballon d'Or in 2013? Share this story with a friend, and let's get the debate going. Who do you think truly deserved it that year? It might seem tough, and many would argue unfair. But at the end of the day, we were witnessing perhaps the greatest ever version of Cristiano Ronaldo in individual terms, and a Lionel Messi who was coming off a season where he had scored an astonishing 91 goals in a calendar year. Even if they didn't win as many collective trophies as Ribery that year, it's hard to argue that they weren't on an individual level simply better players. Ribery would finish out that season winning the domestic double with Bayern under new coach Pep Guardiola. But they would be eliminated from the Champions League in the semi-final by Cristiano Ronaldo's Real Madrid, who would go on to win La Decima. From this point on, we would witness a gradual but clear decline for Ribery, a decline largely accelerated by injuries. The following season, he would suffer a serious ankle injury that would leave him on the sidelines for nearly a full year. In his absence, Bayern would of course win the league yet again. By the time he came back, they were already cruising at the top of the table with Robert Lewandowski's incredible goal-scoring exploits carrying their season. As Ribéry helped them finish off that campaign, it was clear his form was inferior to his usual godlike standards. He was still a great player, managing a goal or assist every 170 minutes. But it was a far cry from the Ballon d'Or level performances we had become so accustomed to. The 2016-17 season would be his last great hurrah. He turned back the clock, scoring or assisting every 90 minutes he was on the pitch, despite playing far fewer minutes than he would have hoped to be capable of. In his final 2 seasons at the club, his offensive numbers would drop below double digits for the first time. And then finally, after 12 incredible years, he left Bayern Munich. He departed as one of the greatest and most decorated players in the club's illustrious history, having won an astonishing 9 Bundesliga titles, 6 German Cups, and a club record of 24 major titles. As an epilogue to his magnificent career, he joined the Italian side Fiorentina. He spent 2 years there, and while his numbers were of course far inferior to his prime, the Viola fans were just happy to have him to witness for a few final times the flashes of genius from a true legend of the game. Franck Ribery lived a life defined by adversity, and he persevered like very few ever could. He lived through scandals, he endured the immense pressure of being an all-time great born in the era of Ronaldo and Messi, and still he managed to shine through to forge his own path and to make himself a legend. I have nothing but admiration for the player, for the fighter, even with his reputation as an off-the-field prankster and troublemaker. Though it must be mentioned that this side of Ribéry might not be as innocent and light-hearted as it sometimes seems. In 2010, he was involved in a damaging prostitution scandal, in which he and some of his French teammates were proven to have had sex with an underage prostitute. In the end, they went unpunished by the law, as the court ruled they were unaware of her true age. I'm not implying anything regarding this story. I just felt it was a significant part of his journey and worthy of a mention. And that's where this incredible football story concludes. What a journey, right? A story of scars, struggle, controversy, and ultimate triumph. I'm so eager to hear your thoughts. What moment in Ribéry's career stood out to you the most? Did his struggle and his unbreakable spirit resonate with you? Please share all your opinions, your favorite memories of him, and any questions you still have in the comments below. I truly love reading them and building this amazing football community with all of you. Thanks for watching.